Ron, thank you so much for joining me today here.
Nice to see you.
Yeah, I'm really honored
It's
to
a
talk to
pleasure,
you.
yeah.
I've seen your work in the past, and specifically regarding homeopathy.
Yeah.
So honored that you traveled all the way from Mumbai to Bangkok for this interview.
Yeah,
So if you could tell our audience a little bit about yourself and your education.
right. I graduated from Homeopathic Medical College, Calicut in 1987. I started my homeopathic education in 1982. Then 1990 onwards, I became a teacher and practitioner full time. 91 to 94, I did my MD first time in India. I completed MD in 1994. Then I was teaching all the ways in the last 29 years. And I did my PhD with homeopathic drugs and its nanotechnological aspects. I completed it in 2015. So I am a teacher and practitioner and researcher for the last three decades.
Where is your practice in India?
I practice basically in Cochin,
Cochin.
in the southern part of India, in Kerala state.
Okay.
And I work as
Hang
the
on just a second. We'll have the planes flying over. We had to deal with this when we were in Amsterdam. We
Yeah.
shot right by the airport in Amsterdam, and every 7 minutes there was a plane.
Yeah, there is a problem with that,
Yeah,
you know.
but no worries. We'll just cut.
Unforeseen problem when you stay
Yeah.
very close to airport.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you practice in.
So I practice in Cochin. It's the southern part of India, where I settled with my family, and I work in a university. It's called Vinayaga Mission Research Foundation in Salem,
Okay.
where I am the director of Homeopathic Medical College.
Okay.
And we have programs of BHMS, that is a homeopathic degree course in India, 5.5 years, and we have specialty MD programs in 7 different branches, 3 years full-time program, and we have a PhD research program also in the university.
Let me ask you this: in India, what are the rates of cancer? I mean, it seems like over the last few years I've seen the rates beginning to creep up.
Cancer is a major problem, healthcare problem now in India too, because of people are more and more entered into the new domain of life, and also the use of more and more chemicals, and there is around 700,000 patients added into the list of cancer every year, and around 600 to 650,000 people die of cancer every year, current statistics says, and it is just behind China and US in the incidence and death of cancer in the world.
Really, just behind China and U.S.
Yeah,
India.
yeah.
Okay. Why do you suppose that is? What are some of the reasons that cancer is increasing?
Well, there are many reasons we can say. Basically, we know that the use of pesticides in agriculture. We started in India in around 1970s, 80s. So that impact is coming into the people when they are becoming older. And another important reason is the longevity of people. The life expectancy is prolonging. When the life expectancy prolongs, the mutation happens more, and that leads to cancer.
Okay.
So there are multiple reasons which adds into the cancer.
Okay. We'll let this plane pass, and I want to ask you about you said the mutations happen, so I'm going to
Yeah.
ask you about that in just a second.
Yeah.
Okay, that wasn't too bad. Make sure it passes here. Okay. So you mentioned the mutations happen. What do you mean?
See, the one thing which we need to know always, the whole human structure is based on the genetics. That means the DNA and the genes and the whole genetic system. So the genes get mutated by environmental influence, by various types of poisonous materials, like radiation itself is a major mutant, or majority of chemicals which are used nowadays in the food industry and in cosmetic industry all have carcinogenic potentials. So they interact with our genetic system and it produces mutation. That mutation leads to the formation of various types of cancers and tumor formations.
So it's the toxic load interacting with your genetics.
Definitely.
Produces. I've seen a lot about GMOs in India, the genetically modified organisms.
Genetic modified organism is just entering into Indian scenario. It started in US basically because all the research begins in US. But genetically modified organisms, the concept and principle is meant to improve the quality of organisms by cut and paste the genes. But the reality we don't know exactly, because we are entering into an uncharted area which was totally unknown to us. And that is not only related to medicine, that is related to the whole existence of human beings. The impact we don't know. It may not be, maybe partially positive, and it may be partially or mostly negative also. We don't know, which will evolve in the course of years when it happens.
So we're kind of in the middle of a big experiment.
Definitely,
On
it's one of the
humans.
biggest experiment which is happening in the history of humanity, because we are touching the genetic system which is the backbone of existence, and we are not very sure what exactly we are doing. Superficially we know, but when you go into the depth, the interaction within the genetic system, it is totally unknown to us, because the DNA coding which we find, which is only 2% of the total genetic material. The 98% of the genetic material which is non-coding part, the functions are not known, absolutely not known. So we don't know what type of interaction is going on there, and how it is going to impact the further evolution of GM related
Right.
things.
It's almost like that we're playing Russian roulette with mankind,
Yeah, exactly,
with the GMOs.
exactly.
Let me ask you this: when it comes to treating cancer specifically, how far back did you begin to treat cancer in your practice? And could you kind of relate a little bit about the way that you can use homeopathy? Because you were sharing with me before, it's fascinating.
Yeah. This is something very interesting, because as homeopaths in India, we are qualified, educationally, institutionally qualified and highly educated in that point of view, and we have no restriction to treat any diseases.
No restrictions.
No restrictions. We can treat any diseases. So we treat from common cold to cancer, from psychiatric issues to acute infections.
Right.
We treat everything. So we develop experience in the years which is not happening around the world. That is one thing very special to Indian scenario. Why this has happened? If you look back 50 to 70 years, then we realize why it has happened. Because homeopathy and all the complementary systems of medicine like naturopathy, osteopathy, everything was prominent in US in the beginning of 20th century. And maybe you all are aware that there was a Abraham Flexner commission and report which happened in 1910, and that report created a new wave for the medical environment, and that is what is called the creation of biomedical molecular biomedical system of medicine.
That's right. Hang on just a second. We'll get that. I'm glad you mentioned that. So for those of you, Dr. Rajendran just mentioned the Flexner report. And the Flexner report is really one of the reasons that modern medicine is the way it is today, with being so drug intensive. So right now we're going to go back to what we've already seen in the Global Quest, which we produced a few years ago, and just get a quick recap of what exactly the Flexner report is that Dr. Rajendran just mentioned. Okay, and then I'll bring us back. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so Dr. Rajendran, so we just saw a little bit of a synopsis of the Flexner report. Go ahead and add a little bit about your perspective on what happened with the Flexner report.
My perspective is the whole medical science is not an isolated entity. It is part and parcel of human evolution, human civilizational evolution and human scientific evolution. In that process, what I perceive now is the medical science is lagging far behind compared to the evolution of science or other sciences which happened in the last 100 years. Medical science is already crystallized into a past. What happened is, the human world was looking for solution for health, diseases and death, but we couldn't do it for the always, never. Even in, you see that in Egyptian civilization, they try to preserve the people as various forms to think they have an afterlife, and various methods of treatment practiced in all civilizations in the history of human evolution. but we were looking for definite answers, and these definite answers became a problem. And after the Renaissance, especially after the Greek civilization in the BC 400 or 500, where there were so many medical sciences starting from Hippocrates and the philosophies of Aristotle, all this influenced, but there was a long gap and hiatus. And after the Renaissance started, we know that the Cartesian philosophy became the backbone of existence of the Western world, and the Cartesian philosophy was supplemented by Newtonian physics, which always ask for objectivity and predictability in science, and which we try to replicate in the medical world. We couldn't do that for 300 years, but it started with the concept of Virchow's concept of cellular pathology. In 1858, Virchow, the pathologist, says that cells are the basic unit of life, and injury to the cell is the cause of disease. And this was supplemented later by the pasteurization by Louis Pasteur and the postulates of Robert Koch regarding the bacteriology, and this made a very, very strong basis for the objectivity and predictability in medicine. That was followed by one of the greatest discoveries, that is of Alexander Fleming in 1929. He discovered penicillin, and this penicillin was and being the basis of conventional biomolecular modern medicine, and the effect was direct. You kill the bacteria and cure the patient, and this was very much observable, practically verifiable, and the dire need of Second World War, especially of war injuries and sepsis, gave a great promotion to the concept of antibiotics, and it was effective. So, the scientific world, everybody believed the true medical science has evolved, but that was a truth at that period. When the further years went on, we could see that that truth is falling down, and it is not a truth at all. And this is followed by, you know, that in 1953, Watson and Crick found the DNA structure. The double helix DNA structure was discovered in 1953. That day only we know that there is something called genes and chromosomes and DNA, which is submerged within the human cells and within the nucleus, and they control things. Then after that, we look at the end of 20th century and the beginning of the 21st century, we see that the genetic decoding happened. The greatest revolution in the history of organic life on earth. And in this revolution, we realized these genes and this DNA, how they are influencing each and every cells and every organs and every character of a human existence. That scientific development is going on one side, but the so-called conventional modern medicine still standing on the theory of Virchow, cells are the basic unit of life. So, the physiological modification is what they are trying to achieve, and the therapy is always based on the basic philosophy of antibiotics. That is why the modern medicine evolved after that: anti-diabetic, anti-hypertensive, anti-epileptic, anti-tumor, everything is anti-drug.
I mean, isn't that kind of what chemotherapy is a glorified antibiotic?
No, it won't work. Antibiotics was a straightaway action on the antibiotics because it is against the bacteria. It worked well. The same philosophy applied in chronic diseases of diabetes, hypertension, cancers, allergies, all the type of diseases where the cause of disease is directly connected to the genetic modifications, epigenetic programming or the gene mutation. Nobody knew that, and we found medicines, discovered medicine by various industries, and we want to sell that medicines. So, the later scientific development is hushed down, and the older science is still promoted in the modern medicine. So, it is a science which is on the edge of failure in that sense. Philosophically speaking, it is a science in the edge of, therapeutically it is in the edge of failure. I am not talking about the technology of medicine. Technology of medicine is a different entity. Therapy of medicine is a different entity. There comes the value of homeopathy.
Yeah, because you just mentioned technology. I thought of nanotechnology, and you were just talking about the nanotechnology of homeopathy. Can you elaborate?
Yeah, because I did intensive research in last 8 years, which was published in many papers and in the form of a book also. I did 33 homeopathic drugs. 33 homeopathic drugs in all dilutions, which crosses Avogadro's number. Avogadro's number, which is one of the greatest obstacle for the evolution and development of homeopathy as a medicine, because as per Avogadro's number, a homeopathic dilution beyond 12C has no molecule in it.
Beyond 12?
Beyond 12C. But we are using dilution 30, 200,000, 10,000, 50,000 and 1 lakh.
Wow.
100,000.
So what exactly does 12C mean? 12 times diluted?
No, it's not exactly like that. Homeopathic preparation of drugs discovered by Dr. Hahnemann in around 1812 to 15 period has a method of trituration by using sugar of milk as a media, and it was 1:99 ratio. The medicinal substance and the sugar of milk is taken, and this is triturated for 1 hour. From that, 1 part is taken, 1 gram is taken, and 99 grams of sugar of milk is added,
like
and
100 to 1.
second dilution, like that, third, fourth, fifth, sixth it goes. Okay. When it converted into water dilution or alcohol dilution, it is 1:99, 1 drop is to 99 drop, or 1 ml is to 99 ml, and 10 strong succussions, powerful succussions. Wow. And from that 1 ml is taken, again 99 ml of alcohol is added. So technically even Hahnemann himself did not believe beyond 30 there is any medicinal content in it.
But you proved there is.
Because thing is, like, I was a practitioner and I saw the result in patients daily basis. If nothing is there, there cannot be any result. So people believed homeopathy is, critics said homeopathy is placebo, and believers said that homeopathy is dynamic medicine, because that is what Hahnemann suggested. Probably it may be dynamic action, but dynamic action happens with some matter, some material. So that is why my mind goes to that side, and I started inquiring into the latest electron microscopic analysis. I did analysis on 2 different types of electron microscopes. Metals and minerals I analyzed in HRTEM, high resolution transmission electron microscope, with a resolution power of magnification power of 0.14 nanometer. And wherever the particles are found, it was elementary composition is analyzed by using energy dispersion spectroscopy. It is an X-ray spectroscopy. So you know the elements within the particle. It is the most modern advanced scientific equipments. With that, I could find in all metals and minerals used in homeopathy, up to the highest dilution, you have plenty of nanoparticles of the original drug material.
Wow, that's a huge find, because
yes.
I've never heard of anybody proving that before,
yeah.
And now you've proved that homeopathy diluted to the 1,000
any extent has, and when the dilution goes up, particles are becoming finer and finer.
Wow, so even potentially more absorbable and
more
usable by the
absorbable,
body.
definitely.
So
and even in plants and organic material, I used a different electron microscope called FESM, field emission scanning electron microscope, with energy dispersion spectroscopy. There too, till the end of dilution, you find large number of particles.
Wow. So talk about that. Now, so now you've scientifically proven that homeopathy is evidence-based now.
It's absolutely evidence-based. There is no point of doubt in that, because these particles which you find in metals and minerals, 1 to 10 nanometer scale size, 1 to 10 nanometer, and these such a small particles have ability to penetrate into your cytoplasm, cell wall and the nuclear wall, and it can produce variety of epigenetic modifications.
So homeopathy can act as an epigenetic switch
100%
in your body,
because there are so many papers published by researchers like Khuda Baksh and many others. They produced a massive evidence with homeopathic ultra high dilutions that they proved that they produce epigenetic modification in the genetic system.
And isn't that what we're looking for with cancer? Epigenetic
Cancer, there are so many papers published by homeopathic drugs which produced genetic modifications.
Name some of the homeopathic drugs that you're using to treat cancer.
I use drugs according to the patient specificity, because homeopathy is purely an individualistic medicine. It is not a statistics based medicine, because every human being has 99.9% common genome between man to man, but there is one mild difference in the genetic structure. Some genes are entirely different from individual to individual. These genes give the personal identity to a person. So in homeopathy,
Just start with in homeopathy.
So in homeopathy, there are 2 events happens. that we should understand very clearly. One is homeopathic drugs are studied, dilutions are studied in healthy human beings, not in animal models like in modern medicine. And in healthy human beings, when you take these diluted medicines 3, 4, 5 days, you find subjective signs and symptoms appears in your mental state, in your physical state. These symptoms are recorded in hundreds of people, and these common symptoms, signs and symptoms produced are taken out and forms a materia medica. This is the basis on which we prescribe in cold or in cancer also. So even in a cancer patient, you look at the drug and you take the case of the patient in detail. We take the pathological variations, we take the diagnostic side. That is only 50% of our work. The 50% of the work is analyzing the patient's characteristic peculiarities.
Okay.
And that characteristic peculiarities dictate the prescription for the patient. So there is no standard prescription for disease basis, but prescription is based on patient basis. So most of the time drugs varies, but the commonly used drugs like lycopodium is one of the commonly used drug. Mercuria solubilis, another commonly used drug. Arsenicum album, calcarea carb, that is calcium carbonate in dilution. Thuja occidentalis, Ruta graveolens, hydrastis. These drugs do, Kali iodatum, all these drugs do magical result with cancer patients. They are not curing the patients. In my experience, I never try to cure a cancer patient, because the cancer, when you understand in depth, you realize cancer is a multi-gene, multi-stage process. There one genetic mutation started. Once the cells multiplication go out of control, they reach immortality. Means they don't get apoptized, they don't get killed by the internal mechanism, and they multiply uncontrollable, not in one location. From that location, these cancer cells migrate through the bloodstream or lymph stream and go to distant part of the body, and they become acting there, and they develop a tumor in that location, and that act as a primary again.
So can
it's not a single primary, then it becomes multiple primaries.
Can homeopathy then act not as a cure to cancer, but as a control?
Yes, for the control of cancer, homeopathy do wonders. Especially because the people generally, when you find cancer, what you basically everybody does is go to a oncologist, go to a cancer center and start treatment. This is what everybody does around the world.
Yeah.
Because what is the learning we have. Then after a stage over, patients become desperate, and they have secondaries. When they have taken 2, 3, 4 courses of chemotherapy, sometimes with radiation, then again the tumor coming back, then patients get exhausted economically, emotionally, in every way. Then they look into alternatives, whether anything is available.
Right.
Then they come to us, because some people suggest, some patients refer them. Then they come, we study the case in detail, we give their constitutional prescriptions. There they get immense relief. Even the tumors, primary tumors disappear sometimes, but the secondary tumors remains. That is a problem with cancer. But the patients will have better life, prolonged quality life, and a peaceful death. This is what I have observed with the terminal stages of cancer.
The quality of life is so important, right?
Definitely. The people who with the oral cancer, they couldn't even drink a spoon of water after a week medication. Majority of them will take a normal meal. They get normal sleep. They have zero pain. And this stage continues for months, 2 months, 3 months, sometimes 6 months, even more than that. Then an end comes, a reversal happens, a final stage, one day, 24 to 48 hours, and mostly a painless death, where even the morphine repeated doses won't reduce the pain. The homeopathic, this nanopharmacological medicine will give instant relief. I have seen instant relief in cancer pains.
And isn't that what the families want? That's what the person wants. They want pain relief.
Yeah.
They want extended life and quality of life.
And here 2, 3 things with homeopathy is, it won't drain out the patient's finance. The cost is If you look at a cancer, especially a leukemia patient, where if the bone marrow transplant saves the patient, that is wonderful, whatever cost you do, fine. But a good number of patients, even after chemo and followed by bone marrow therapy, patient will become worse and the cost is too high.
Yeah.
And then a middle class man, in Indian scenario, we don't have too much of insurance coverage, a personal money they have to spend. A middle class family become lower middle class after the treatment, and you lose the person also.
You've lost your finances, you've lost your loved one.
You lost everything.
So you're allowing people to have quality of life at a very affordable price, control the cancer,
Yes.
lessen the pain.
Yes.
It's like a win-win-win-win-win situation
Yes.
with homeopathy. Did Shahzad come to your clinic to film? Did you have anyone that came to film you with your patients?
No.
No, I was just curious.
Not yet. Not
You had,
yet.
okay. So what Dr. Rajendran just mentioned about homeopathy, we just saw a summary from the Global Quest about the Flexion report. What many people don't realize is that John D. Rockefeller, even though he proclaimed that homeopathy was quackery, he had his own personal homeopath till the day he died.
Oh.
So the proof's in the pudding, right?
That's really great. It's a new information I never knew about.
He was a firm believer in homeopathy, but on the outside he condemned it as quackery.
The reason for homeopathy is condemned like that is, one thing is scientifically people were not aware of that. Science was not evolved to that point. One thing is Hahnemann's method of preparation of medicine was something like a magical thing. People don't know what is this. But now we know that in nanotechnology, nanoparticles are created by the same process which Hahnemann utilized, that is grinding and milling.
Mm.
Grinding and milling is what Hahnemann used, and grinding and milling is what modern nanotechnology used to create nanoparticles of insoluble materials. So now scientifically it is coming closer.
Mm.
And now we are identifying by using the highest electron microscope, there are plenty of millions of particles. If you take a micro drop, you find millions of particles in that. A single drop of homeopathic drug, a micro drop, contains millions of nanoparticles. That is given a very detailed way in my book, Nanodynamics.
Well, I look forward to reading it. It's fascinating information, Dr. Rajendran.
So what happens is homeopathy is advanced, it produces epigenetic modification, it cures the diseases at genetic level. Whereas modern medicine, which is mostly a biomolecular medicine, goes to the biochemical level and make corrections at biochemical level in general. And that is why the depth of action of homeopathy is far, far superior than any existing method which I know right now.
Mm. And you're our first interview of the doctors from India that are coming over here to Bangkok, and this is just the perfect initial interview for us, because you've just explained why homeopathy is working. You've scientifically verified it as evidence-based medicine, and I'm sure that many of the other doctors that we're going to interview after you are going to be sharing homeopathy.
Yeah.
And you've proved that what Hahnemann did was science-based, and now we're understanding why it works.
Yes, we know now how it works, but this knowledge should become a scientific knowledge. The science has to know about it, and I am very thankful in that sense to the Indian civilizational background, because whenever homeopathy was thrashed and banned all over the world, especially in Europe and America, India has right honestly taken up homeopathy in 1948 itself, and I think 1950 Indian Parliament has passed an act for homeopathy, and homeopathy became a recognized system of treatment. That is why we get freedom in India to have education, to have practice, and to get equal support what is given to modern medicine. Even though the quantity of support is small, but still it is a great support compared to anywhere in the world.
And so patients there have the option to choose.
Patients have the free option in India, which I like too much, because a patient can decide which doctor he wanted to see. But you look at US or in many developed nations, I prefer to call it as a medical terrorism. Why? Because a patient's freedom is totally taken out. You have to go to your primary physician, he will decide where you have to go, and you have to wait for months together sometimes to find a specialist and get his opinion, and that too only conventional modern medicine. You have no option kept in your table which is other than this.
Mm-hmm.
So that is something you are disrobing the people from their freedom of their health, their life, and no government is supposed to do that, because science is not an end in itself. Science is a process of evolution, which people are conveniently forgetting and say this is only science, the remaining is not science. Who gave the right to speak like that?
I agree. So it sounds, based upon your communications here today, that India, when it comes to medical, is one of the freest nations on earth.
Definitely, because now we have a system which is called Ayush, Ayurveda, Yoga, Unani, Siddha and Homeopathy. These are 5 different systems of treatment officially recognized, with a separate ministry and a separate minister and a separate government system for that. And all these systems are having 100 to 200 medical institutions teaching the systems all over India.
Wow. Do you have a lot of medical tourism there? Do people come over to be treated?
Definitely, lot of people are coming to India for medical tourism, especially to my state of Kerala, which is actually the backbone of Ayurvedic method of treatment. Thousands of people are coming all over the world for Ayurvedic treatment and well-being. Like that, every system has its own freedom of growth, which is banned in other places. Very recently, some other countries, especially from Bulgaria, not Bulgaria, I am sorry, Romania, doctors contacted me, I know them, they are all medical doctors, modern medicine doctors practicing homeopathy. There was a strong movement to ban homeopathy there, or to control the practice of homeopathy, but they are resisting that. So they have taken all my work to submit to the parliamentary committee, saying that this science is a real science, because the general perception is what is publicized by cooked up articles, cooked up meta-analysis and all sort of scientific fraud to suppress some sciences, and that is totally an unscientific activity.
It is unscientific. But Dr. Rajendran, thank you for this amazing interview today, and thank you for adding scientific validity. You're a trailblazer in this area with homeopathy and with proving that it's evidence-based
And
medicine.
one more thing I just wanted to tell you.
Yeah.
Look at the human genome. People, we are not aware of things in its depth. A human being is, we saw the 50, 70 kg, kilogram, 6 feet height human being. But a human being is composed of maybe around 100 trillion cells. That we know it. And every cell has the genetic material, the DNA in the nucleus. And this nucleus contains, it's only a small size, but it contains genetic material. If you unfold the DNA of one cell, it is 2 meters.
2 meters.
2 meters length. One DNA from one human organic cell, if you remove from the nucleus and stretch it, it is 2 meters.
And we have trillions of those.
And we have around 100 trillion cells. So the total number of human DNA, if you stretch it properly, it is, the size is double the diameter of solar system.
Wow.
Double the diameter of solar system is
solar
a
system.
DNA present in one human being.
That's
And
amazing.
it is so complex. And that complex system which is creating a human being, sustaining a human being, and even finally destructing a human being. And that system we are trying to treat by all sort of very, very superficial method, which is called conventional medicine, by various chemicals in milligram or in gram stages. If you take any modern medicine drug in milligrams, 5 years, 10 years, how many kilograms you take?
Good analogy. I've never.
Whereas
thought
in
about that.
homeopathy, we are giving nanoparticles in nanoscale. How much amount you take, it is negligible. But they are highly potent. Why it is potent? The Lorentz theory is there. That means, that is in the quantum physics, where the theory says, if a minutest stimuli given at the basic level, the output at the end stage will be enormous. It is like a butterfly's flapping of the wings in Brazil or elsewhere can produce a tornado in the US. So a human genetic system is like that.
Yeah.
If you change the nitrogen basis DNA coding of adenine, thymine, guanine, cytosine in a particular gene, if you make a small changes in the chemical structure, that is a very minimal change. But when this change converted from DNA to RNA through the messenger RNAs, the message will be taken and the RNA will copy the DNA coding, and it takes from DNA to the ribosomes, and ribosomes produces the protein according to this command, and this protein dictate the body functioning. So, a smallest change in the DNA structure in the genes will produce a different protein by the ribosomes, and that produces a cancer, that produces a diabetes, that produces a hypertension, that produces multiple sclerosis, that produces anything in your body, a psoriasis, a rheumatoid arthritis, everything is produced because of this slightest change in the DNA. This is what we think you need to treat where, not in the diabetic level, not in the rheumatoid arthritis, not on the tumor. You need to treat in the genetic modification, where if your drugs are capable of penetrating the nucleus and modifying the genes by epigenetic changes, that is the finest and perfect cure possible. And that is what homeopathy is achieved.
That is what homeopathy does. Amazing. Thank you so much for what a great interview.
Thank you so much.
I have had many interviews over the years about homeopathy, but I've never had one that explained it to this detail scientifically. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Thank you for
so
your
much.
time and your effort for
This is awesome.
supporting the real science in the world.
You bet. You bet. What a great interview on homeopathy, huh?
Thank you.
Great.
That was great.
Thank you very much. Only take